The date is 6/21/18. Time is 6:30 p.m. David Champy II.
Present.
Geary Ciccarone.
Here.
Ed Comeau.
Here.
Stephen Bailey.
Here.
Dianne Smith.
Here.
Tim Straz.
Here.
Rick Charette.
Present.
We have plenty for a quorum.
Thank you. I'll start the meeting with public comments.
I'd like to pick the planning board's brain if I could.
Just for the record, state your name, please.
Susan Zellick, Z-E-L-E-K. And you have to bear with me, I have a hearing disability. I live at 112 Clark Road, and I have almost 8 acres of land. And I'd like to find out the possibility of doing a subdivision. My daughter, Jen Murphy, grew up here in Brookfield. She's owned 2 homes here. She's currently living in Effingham, putting her house on the market. She'd like to move back to Brookfield. I'm in my 70s. It would be beneficial for me to have her living near me. What we're looking at is, this is Clark Road. This is my existing driveway. The road, the land comes up, includes the Clark Cemetery, and then goes back out here into the woods. Right now, it's clear land to about here, mostly horse pasture. I don't have horses anymore. And what we're looking at is the possibility, I know this is going to be an issue, I only have 420 feet of frontage. We're looking at pretty much splitting it with an easement across the driveway here to the stone wall, coming up the stone wall, following up here to the black land, which would give me probably 2 1/3, 2 1/4 acres. And then the rest would be here, and she would be building a house down in this area.
Okay, the planning board, our main objective is to ensure that we're following zoning. And the first thing that we do see, and you've obviously pointed it out, is there is not enough road frontage to be able to have 2 house lots and subdivide. So that would be a non-conforming lot if you were to subdivide. So the suggestion that I would have is to contact the ZBA, thank you, and speak with them and make a proposal. The other alternative you could have with this current lot, if you wanted to add an area for her to live, is there's the attached accessory dwelling unit, and that is permitted on a single lot.
No. We love each other dearly.
Completely understand.
Giving you another option. So I would say the first thing to do is to schedule a meeting with the ZBA. And then if they end up approving something like that, then we can move forward.
Okay. Now, the other thing I thought of possibly would be doing, if I could, this is now owned by Paul Tremblay, if he would be in agreement to do a lot line adjustment where I could pick up the frontage. I'd rather not do that, but if I had to, would that smooth things away a little better?
Go ahead, Gary.
I'd go the ZBA route first.
Yeah.
If they turn you down for whatever reason, because the butters get noticed, and they come, and there may be no problem anywhere.
Yeah.
And you may get a grant on that, I don't know. I can't speak for that, for the ZBA. But if he gives you, let's say he were to give you, what you got here?
420.
Well, if he were to give you 80 feet right here, and only have to be 20 feet wide, you would have 500 feet.
But my next step should be the ZBA.
Correct.
Yeah, because then you don't have to buy anything from the neighbor.
Yep.
And then if you have to pay him a
What-
little bit of money to get you where you have to go, we wouldn't have anything to say at all about
Okay.
2 lots with 500 feet of frontage between them.
Now, if the ZBA says, okay, you can have a variance, you can do that, we have all of the applications that my daughter printed out. Do we come back here to the planning board? No, we do.
Yes, you have to for subdivision.
Okay,
Oh, yes.
okay.
Now, is the subdivision and building a home, those are two separate applications?
Yep.
Okay, so this isn't like a comprehensive, this is just for the subdivision?
Well, we would help, we would expedite it for what your purpose is, so you're not building a development. You just want a house for your daughter, right? I mean, we're not gonna, if you get all your ducks in a row, we're not gonna hold you up.
Yeah.
What is your past history with situations like this?
You know, it depends on the,
Good.
who's there.
I know a neighbor to the east side of me had less than 200 feet, but of course she had almost 200 acres. And, you know, we all went to the hearing and she did get a variance. We were all for it.
I mean, again, as far as the variance, that has to be done through ZBA.
Mhm.
And the recent history is they've been fairly lenient, but there's no guarantees. And of course, there are something like 7 criteria that you have to follow and to be in that category in order to receive those variances, so.
Now, where do I find a list of those 7 items?
I may have a document in the file over there for ZBA. I can see about, with your permission, Mr. Chairman, I can see if there's some supplies like that.
Diane?
I believe it's in our zoning bylaws, is it not?
This,
The identification of the items that the ZBA, how they review?
And those are-
I don't recall seeing that.
No. Subdivision, yes,
Yeah, I think there is subdivision, but we don't get involved with the ZBA.
not at all.
When you say subdivision, and people immediately think of, you know, ticket-taking little house to fall on the road.
Well, nobody knows
That's
that.
what it's talking about, no.
Who's running the ZBA? Does anybody here know, Rick, do you know who's in charge of the ZBA now?
I think it's Paul Trump.
Yeah, Paul Tremblay, Frank Frazier.
My neighbor.
Ah,
So it's-
boy, you're gonna pay for that land.
What if I'll take it out in plans?
Good, Diane.
Page 11 of our zoning bylaws, Article 5. Article 4 is non-conforming use, Article 5 is zoning board of adjustment, and it goes on to describe the issues, the manner in which they make their decisions
That's what I need to know.
on page 11.
Yeah.
Article 5 is on page 11.
But I understand that the ZBA does not have a regular schedule, it's pretty much as needed.
Correct.
Very good, well, thank you very much.
I just had one, in your package here, your application review, you have in here that the planning board meetings are held second Monday of each month.
We discussed that at the last meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, we need to update,
Little spoon for you here.
3 years, 5 years?
Thank
Hey,
you.
if you build a house, you could be your new assistant administrator.
What?
what?
We're looking for somebody.
We do have an opening if you're interested.
She has to be a resident.
No, she doesn't.
Oh.
No.
It's a long way to come from Effingham to here.
This still shows the old,
Here's some documentation that they held out also.
wonderful. Great, well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Announcements and correspondence mail. There is a copy of convene. I know you've been waiting for this one too. George, if you put that in the common area, that'd be appreciated. Review and possible approval of the May 17th meeting minutes. motion to accept the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Same.
Abstain? Opposed? Motion carries. New business. We're going to move on to discussion of the master plan. From the last meeting, there was some discussion regarding the surveys and a delay in getting the surveys out due to needing a credit card. And George discussed with them the potential to get an invoice, receive an invoice, and then pay the bill. That didn't seem to go very far. So my next suggestion would be to contact Mary Lou and see if she could contact Click to Mail with a credit card. George?
Mr. Chairman, so I did talk to Mary Lou, and there is no town credit card. So she suggested that you approach her and request that this be paid ASAP. That could expedite things as far as sending out a check that would be under our budget. And therefore, she could present it as she sees fit at this coming selectmen's meeting.
Okay, a check to Click to Mail for the total.
Okay.
Is that what you're asking? So what does Mary Lou need from,
She would need, you're right, she would need the full amount.
right?
And I'll make sure that you get that. But she would need the okay through an official person. In other words, not myself.
Okay. If you can give me the total on that, I'll contact Mary Lou, and we can get a check brought forward to the selectmen.
Yep.
This has gone on to... Not of any fault of yours, by the way. I know this has been a long process.
Mr. Chairman, can you repeat the amount again?
So, I think it was from the last meeting, it was 654,
I think it was 54, but I'm not sure.
yeah. All right, so that is what we'll discuss with the master plan for today. Actually, I do want to thank Tim for looking into SurveyMonkey, by the way. $37 a month is not something we want to get into. And your suggestion of the Google survey, if we got you a document,
Yes, no, Word doc or whatever we use to formulate the survey, then I can transfer that.
Okay.
So,
and we can put a link right on our town website.
yes.
Okay.
So
So I do have a document that, I have the original document. I think George might have that too, but I can send that off to you. If that's something you could work on, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Cool, appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman,
Ed?
does it have to be, you said that SurveyMonkey would cost $37 a month.
Yes.
Does it have to, I mean, I have SurveyMonkey that I use. Can I share it with the planning board to get this thing moving? I'm gonna share my credit card in a minute to get the survey moving too. This is ridiculous.
Mr. Chair,
George?
according to what Tim had previously reported, they only have, we're only allowed to put 10 questions on there. Is that right, Tim?
Unless you paid the $37 a month, yeah. Then they're looking to, then you can post as many surveys and questions as you like.
Because all it needs is a password and a code, and you're in.
And you have a membership to it?
Yeah. I don't know if there's any restrictions for using, personal accounts of other people to do town business.
If you're acting as a town official though, I don't see why that wouldn't be something you could do.
I have to look into it because it could be, it could be a type of donation which would have to be voted on by the selectmen, I would assume. Don't know.
I think, if Tim, if you're okay with doing the Google,
I'm fine with that before, so it's.
I think that will probably be the best thing, maybe we can put the link on our page. Thank you for offering, sure, appreciate it, but I don't want to get into any muddy water and people saying, well, somebody's doing things behind the scenes and, you know, Ed's changing the survey, and we don't want to get into that. So, right?
I think Google will work better anyway, I think.
All right, thank you, Ed, appreciate it. Thank you, Tim.
Yep.
All right, so that's enough with the master plan. There was some discussion at the last meeting asking as to why I had put something called agritourism as a discussion point. So there have been some questions in town as to what the town will allow with regards to agritourism. I actually got a phone call from the realtor who's representing the Sanborn farm as well. She's had people also curious as to what will the town allow there. Some people are curious if the town would allow, one of the things that they refer to in the RSA is lodging for agritourism. That for agritourism, that they are allowed to provide overnight stay. Which with our town, it's kind of difficult because you don't have cabins and hotel rooms and whatever else on these farms. So the questions that I've been asked is whether or not the town would allow for potential for a few cabins to be put in on a farm, and they could have people stay in cabins. So that's why the agritourism part came up. As far as the cabins go, I looked into it a little bit further, and the cabins would still have to meet the zoning requirements because it would be a separate building on a separate lot that would be habitable by individuals. So the way that our zoning is written, I don't see how, unless they have 200 feet of road frontage and they want to subdivide and put a structure in, I don't see how you could add detached dwellings in the form of a cabin. Okay?
Well, it's a semantics discussion on what you call it, whether you call it a dwelling or not. It depends on what it consists of. We've got 632:A, is it? I'm looking for it right now. We've adopted the state definition of agriculture as our definition of agriculture with no codicils or exceptions, which means that what the state allows, we have to allow, unless we want to alter our zoning regulations. So whatever the state allows, unless it's directly in violation of our zoning, if the state were to, the problem is, we are zoned RA. So if the state says this is what agriculture is, and we've adopted the state's definition of agriculture under 632:A, is that what it is?
It's 2134A.
2134, well, they rewrote the books, I was fighting for the firewood. Point being, we really have no choice but to do what the state says agriculture allows. And in terms of cabins, I don't think they can be called a detached dwelling, depending on what their function is. If it's a seasonal place for campers and a horse, let's say you have an agritourism farm. If the state says that's agritourism, we've adopted it. That's not a subdividable dwelling. It's not something you're going to sell. I think we'd be in trouble if we told somebody you can't do that, depending on the parameters. But I mean, and I don't know what the state's calling it now. This is a new book. I haven't read it, so I've got to look at it. But whatever the state says is we've adopted it, and that's what it is.
You have to re-adopt it if they change it?
Huh?
They change the definition?
Well, if we've adopted whatever the state has adopted, or whatever the state regulations are, we have to comply if they change them to their change regulations. We adopted the state's regulation. We voted on it. At town meeting, actually. And whatever the state regulation is subject to change, we have to comply with the new regulation. We don't get what that point in time was and get to keep that, because we can't do anything less restrictive than the state. We can get more restrictive, we can't get less restrictive.
No, that answers the question. That answers my question.
Oh, okay.
So, under 21:34, speaking to agritourism, marketing including agritourism, which means attracting visitors to a farm, to attend an event, activities that are necessary uses to the primary farm operations, including but not limited to eating a meal, making overnight stays, enjoyment of the farm environment, education about the farm operations, or active involvement in the activity of the farm. So, in discussion further with some other people as well, we were talking about, and these are some of the people asking the questions, if you had a large home that you're allowed to do a bed and breakfast in, let's say, and people can spend the night there as part of the agritourism business. But this doesn't speak specifically to saying that you're permitted to be able to build separate structures and have overnight stay.
I don't know, I have to read it thoroughly, I have no idea.
Diane?
I'm reading the same thing, and it says, not necessary uses, excuse me for correcting what you said, it is accessory uses.
Yes, thank you.
And I agree with you, David, that this doesn't address the issue of cabins. It's just leaving it open for, it says one phrase, making overnight stays, and then other phrases in there, eating a meal, enjoyment of the farm environment. There's all sorts of these activities that are loosely defined as agritourism. So I support your comments regarding the issue of constructing cabins isn't addressed by the statute.
Right.
It would
Default to our
presumably-
zoning.
Correct, in my opinion.
Go and read the statute.
Just an example, there's a orchard out in the western part of the state, and they do weddings, events and everything. And the farmhouse that is on the property is available for people to rent to stay in.
Yep.
There's no extra structures there,
Right.
just the house that was on the property. That's what they've done.
So that was the main reason I wanted to bring up the agritourism question, because the law, I think 2017 was it, was updated? And I just wanted to see if there was anything that would permit that, and the more that I reviewed it, the more that I looked into what the RSA said, I don't feel that it does permit it. Doesn't give the authority to be able to build separate structures, it just says allows for overnight stay. Rich?
I think Rick made a very important point with Gary. Whatever the state decides is allowed, we're obligated to support. That's wide open. So if we're not happy with that in the town, if we're not happy with that in the town, we should think about what we want to happen. Just comment.
Yeah. Thank you. Any further discussion?
Are you proposing, Mr. Chairman, in the future, we review the ordinances to perhaps propose a warrant article to change the ordinances to add that ability?
I think what we'd want to do is understand what the people in town want first. I don't think that that should be decided upon from us. And that would really come down to the feedback we received from people. I think the master plan would be a big help with that as well. So,
I don't remember the questions on it. Were there any questions concerning agritourism on there? Other than vague generalities that don't really mean anything.
nothing directly aimed at agritourism. It just talks about, I believe, our current zoning. Leave the zoning as is.
So we're not gonna get much out of that survey about real specified topics.
The hopes is to have the public involved while we're doing the master plan and receive feedback from the public while we're working on the master plan. I'm hoping that some things can come out of that during this. I think as a time, at this time, I'm trying to go back to people asking the question and realtors at this point. You know, I had a realtor call me up and talk to me for over an hour asking about the Sanborn farm, asking questions about what does the town allow, and I basically referred to our zoning. And then she called me back and asked me more questions about the zoning. So I said, we have to go by what the state says with agritourism, and it doesn't refer to allowing additional buildings. And her question was whether or not they could have a bed and breakfast and rent out rooms. I said, it's an existing structure. We can't say no to that.
You know, as much as I don't really like to talk to the lawyer, but this is a question for Laura. I'll tell you why. It's a semantics issue. If you're talking about, let's say somebody has a farm and they raise cows and milk them, and they have buildings where people can stay in the summertime, like a camp setting. That's a building. Now that by some people would be innocuous and some people would consider not so innocuous. But the buildings are not really the issue, because you can have all kinds of buildings on the farm. You're gonna have buildings for your cows. I used to have horses that would winter over and we'd work them. And they were living creatures that boarded at my farm for a period of time, and I ran them around the circle all winter long to keep them healthy. And what we're talking about is we can do that with animals, but we can't do it with human beings, even though it's directly related to agriculture. I think it's a little confusing. And that, you know, you hate to spend the town's money on an attorney, but if the question comes up, it's really nice to know where you stand legally. Because these things are always written so vague that you can manipulate them. That's the purpose of them.
Right. So my comment to you is going to be, an animal does not create a town liability. Additional people residing in a building creates an additional town liability. Right? So if you have smaller buildings and you have people that are residing in those smaller buildings, and then they end up renting for a night, 2 nights, a week, a year, 2 years, having a kid, having a larger family, you have liabilities there. You're not bringing additional taxes into the town, right?
If it were cabins versus structures with septic systems, yeah, I could see limiting the scope of that, so people can't just move in and set up housekeeping.
But your horses aren't going to cause an additional bill from.
Yes, they do. If they run over somebody and trample them, there's liability.
I like the B&B thought that you had there, because it seems it's kind of in the historical nature of this town as being a stopping point on the way to Wolfboro or other places that towns, homes have historically been open to visitors for refuge for the night or extended period for vacation. So, I don't know, there seems to be some precedence for that in a person's home versus
Our zoning allows for it.
creating other dwellings. So, I think I guess I'm reiterating in the sense that for that realtor person who is speaking to that could be a talking point to that.
Right.
Let me ask you a question. What kind of liability were you referring to?
So you have, if you increase the population, but you don't have as many taxpayers, it costs the town more money, correct?
You mean permanent residents in these things?
Could be the next step.
That could be the next step. If you have a structure on there, you don't have a way to regulate whether or not that person is in there all year or 2 years or.
Yeah, you do. It can't be an accessory, it can't be a dwelling unit unless it conforms to a certain square footage, that's it. And it has to have a septic system, a working bathroom, a kitchen, it's all in our ordinances.
You know, you're gonna go knock on that cabin door and say, you've lived here too long?
Well, put it this way. If you were to have a camp with a bunch of buildings on cinder blocks that you can't live in the winter no matter what you do, and that was part of your agritourism program, that's a far cry from what you're talking about, adding children to our school system that we have to pay taxes on, which is kind of where we're going with that. So I'm just saying, there's a fine line between all this stuff, and it wouldn't be a bad idea if the subject comes up to say to the attorney, like I said, I hate spending the town's money, but taking a position on something without knowing is not the best way to go. But anyway,
Also, it's not exactly a working farm down there, is it?
Sanborn?
Yeah.
Not right now, no,
Are they gonna turn it into
potentially.
a working farm or enough farming to attract tourists?
So.
Main business being,
So there's actually two lots, there's two lots there. There's a 5-acre lot, which is already subdivided. The discussion was potentially building a house on that and then using the farm as agritourism, as a bed and breakfast. And having one of the owners reside, it was a family that was interested in purchasing. So in that discussion, I said our zoning is what's gonna control that, not, you know, I mean, if it's a subdividable piece, if it's already a building lot, then you can build a building there. If you're gonna use it as a bed and breakfast, then our zoning allows for that.
right, you live
But
there.
Additional buildings, I said, you wouldn't be able to do that because you need to have the road frontage, you need to have lots, you need to have the ability to do that.
Also, just for thought, the campground proposal up on Tumble Down Dick Road, the town sent that down in flames.
Right.
So it's probably not something that people would want around here or in that town. No. Maybe things have changed, but the zoning held up for that.
Gary?
I just think all that has to do with permanent structures for year-round residency. That's where I think that lies. I think it doesn't have anything to do with a cabin set up for a couple of kids that are here to get, I don't do it anymore, but horse training. Say when we were training horses, you had people come for a horse school and you had a cabin that, or 4 little cabins, and I get 80 acres, where the kids could stay and work the horses, and that's not a permanent structure. I don't see where that can be comparable to what you're talking about, subdivision setbacks. And it really all boils down to the state, the law, what's permissible, and legal opinion. That's my opinion. We don't have the problem right now,
Right.
but we could get it. Agritourism, you know, we're RA.
So this is a potentially something that the townspeople could vote in on and determine if that's something that they want. Diane?
I was just going to suggest that we defer calling the lawyer until there's a specific issue to address.
Agreed.
Okay, I agree with that. All right, so that was why we had our agritourism on the agenda. Is there any further discussion we want to have, or do we want to table it for this point until we might have something come up later on? But again, I'm just open for discussion. Okay, detached ADUs. So this is kind of along the same lines. So I did look at the RSA relating to detached ADUs. It leaves the jurisdiction up to the town whether or not we want to allow detached ADUs. The state does not say it's mandated that you have to allow it. So that's another one that I think will be for further discussion. once we receive some feedback from people in town, because that is a question on the survey. Diane?
Have you gotten any feedback from the code enforcement officer as to whether or not any requests have come in regarding that? I haven't finished going through and comparing what the original language for the accessory dwelling unit law that we based our zoning on changed during 2017. But I did check, I actually was working backwards, and there was no change to the detached accessory dwelling unit language. So, anyway, just
Thank you. So the reason why this is on here for old business was something that came up, and we decided that we would keep it on our agenda to discuss. I think we can also use the feedback from our master plan survey on that as well, to understand where we want to go with that with regards to potentially having something on the ballot.
When the state changed their ADU laws, was that last year or the year previous?
Last year.
Last year.
We fixed up our zoning and had it on the ballot. The people who voted on it to have our zoning just last year, what we see in the zoning today.
I don't think we distinctly addressed detached ADUs. I have to go back and look at it.
It was just attached.
It was attached,
Right.
yeah,
We were gonna try that first.
right, and we're gonna hold off on the detached units. You still investigating?
No, I just read it. I'm just out of curiosity, get more familiar with it.
Yeah, there's nothing there that spoke specifically that the state allowed it. It was the town can make that decision, so. Diane?
Is that the most recent book that we have?
This one here.
The book,
Do you wanna see this one?
no, well, it's this, oh, I have the old one. All right, never mind.
You want it?
I'll get it later. Never mind, thank you. Mine wasn't updated for the 2017 changes, which, as far as I can tell so far, only changed the issues related to septic. I haven't finished going through them.
Mr. Chairman, just for the sake of discussion, has there been anybody that's applied or built an accessory dwelling unit in Brookfield since that time?
Yes.
Has there been?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's actually one that's only 2 years old on Moose Mountain Road.
Attached.
Yep, attached.
And there's others.
Yep.
Thank you.
Problem. Any further discussion relating to detached ADUs? Okay, moving on. Discussion regarding SRPC dues. So on April 3rd, there was an invoice from SRPC sent to the administrative assistant for the selectmen, along with a denial letter. They have been very persistent on receiving a signature on this denial letter for paying SRPC dues. They need this by the end of the month to be able to close their books, to be legitimate for auditing. So they reached out to us again and said, are you paying SRPC dues? So I think we're gonna have a vote on it today, whether or not we're going to pay in this year. In the years past, we have not paid in, and I don't recall us filling out a letter that was a denial letter.
I can't remember, I'm sorry.
Who are these persons they want to sign the denial letter? Planning board chairman, selectman?
So this is directed at the selectmen.
Okay.
The selectmen have asked the planning board to review it. I mean, we could basically turn it over to the selectmen if we wanted to and say, you guys make your decision if you want. But they're giving us the opportunity to vote on it and determine whether or not we feel that we should be paying into SRPC.
They know that we haven't paid in the past. And what they're looking for now is a signed document that we're not going to pay. And it is not required to sign the document.
Right.
It's a request.
And they said that on the request too. So, what, do we want to sign a document saying we're not going to pay, or do we want to go on the past, have we done in the past and just not pay? Tell them we're not going to pay, or we want to join and pay? It's kind of three options you have.
Mr. Chairman, I'm recalling that for at least 2 years, I'm remembering there was some type of document, letter, I don't know if it was signed or just voted on, that went from our vote of the planning board to the selectmen. The selectmen got the same letter last year, and that was sent back to SRPC.
You're right.
3, maybe 4 years ago, there was another discussion when we went through the statutory requirements to sign a document. I believe you were here at that time, and we found there was no statutory requirement to do it. That it's just, from, as I understand, it's just for a audit trail for their records, so it just doesn't appear as just an empty void on their books, I'm assuming.
Right. And that's what the email was basically explaining, that they need it by the end of the month for audit reasons.
But did we vote? We didn't vote to not pay the dues, did we? I don't
Yes.
recall we did.
We did.
This,
Oh, I don't know about
Not
this.
this time, but in
4 years
in the
ago we
past
did.
we have, yeah. So, I guess the question I have is, what danger do we see by signing a denial letter saying that we're not gonna pay it? I don't see an issue with that. I mean, it formalizes that we're all agreeing that we're not interested in paying the SRPC dues,
Don't we have to vote on this?
or are we going to sign it, or are we not? So, Gary brings up a good point. Are we gonna change it this year? There was some discussion, Dianne was talking about some change of hands going on at SRPC. And there was also some discussion as to how much of a voice we have with SRPC and what type of benefits do we receive from SRPC by paying the dues. So, Dianne,
Could you remind me, please, what the dues are, the dollar amount?
I don't have the invoice in front of me.
I think it's 856, I believe.
approximately.
Okay, sorry.
Why don't you finish this?
My comments are regarding the staffing there. There's a new executive director. She started about 2 or 3 weeks ago. I don't know, I mean, this woman's been in this business, in this endeavor for quite a few years, has a very strong background, and I think it'd be interesting to see what, if anything, changes. That said, I guess I would ask one more question. Is it in our budget for this year? If it's not in our budget for this year, then I would suggest that we not pay it this year. And my personal opinion is sign the letter for their audit trail, as long as it doesn't say, we will never pay ever, and just be on with it.
Gary?
Well, we voted on it 4 years ago because of the realization that the ultimate goal of the planning regions in the state is the elimination of these settings. That's their primary function. And it's not a malicious thing, it's not adversarial, but the point is they want to do the planning for us. They don't want planning to be done on a local level. It should be managed because they're all management educated people that went through school to learn how to manage and plan, and that communities should not be in charge of their own management when they can do it better. That's the mission and the function of all the regional planning thing. It's not, like I said, a bunch of people that are doing insidious things, But that's exactly what the end result is to be, that we're eliminated as nothing more than maybe a figurehead. We might meet, but we won't do any legislation. They're gonna do the planning for us. That's their function. And we have to determine whether or not that's the direction we wanna go in as a town. Do we wanna let everybody else do it for us, or do we wanna continue managing our own affairs? So,
So if we pay dues, we dissolve this group? Is that what he's?
So I think Gary is acting upon some previous experience with, when we had SRPC in here at one time, they did some presentations, they started micromanaging, and it got to the point that we weren't feeling like we had our input. So I think that's where he's going with that. So,
That's a
Diane?
different way to say it, yes.
I worked for a regional planning agency in 1979 to 1981. I have had associations with regional planning agencies throughout my entire transportation career. Their role, I do not buy into Gary's characterization of the role of regional planning agencies here, or I can't speak to other places. My experience has been in New Hampshire and Massachusetts. That is not their goal, is not to micromanage planning at the local level. What I have found as the representative for the town of Brookfield in the last couple of years to SRPC is that they provide supports for regional planning agencies for issues that are related to planning within a community or within a set of communities where we're not isolated from one another. And in fact, they provide supports for us. And I strongly disagree with Gary's characterization of regional planning agencies. They cannot control, they are statutorily unable to control planning at the local level. That is not their mandate, that is not their function, that is not their authority.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ossipee wrestled with the paying dues, and Wakefield wrestled with paying the dues. For me, it's a use issue. Ossipee decided to pay the dues because if they hadn't paid the dues, they would not have the ability to have the hazardous waste collection day, which is a huge expense for a town to do. It was roughly $4,000 or $5,000, which was their hazardous waste day. That's how much it would cost, but the funding was covered through a consortium of people who would do it. So they decided just on that note, because it saves them money for the hazardous waste day, that they would do that they would have to do. And the same thing happened with Wakefield, because the hazardous waste day in Ossipee was like $44,500, and that was pretty much the same amount of money that they paid to the Lakes Region Planning Commission. So they figured, well, that's a good deal, at least they're getting something for it. Now Brookfield, we don't have a hazardous waste collection day, and I don't know how many times over the 7 years I've been in town that we've used their services. Like, for instance, Effingham has decided to pay dues to the Lakes Region Planning Commission, and they have maps lining their room, and they use all of what the regional planning commissions will offer, including grant help and everything. Do we do that? It doesn't appear so. And we're trying to do a master plan survey, and that's costing money. And it just doesn't make sense to spend the $850 some odd dollars to do that at this time. If we were using all those services, then I think it would be advantageous to do it, but we're not using it, so.
So the services they offer, I mean, is there like a future outlook that we'd be able to use those, you think?
Well, they have contracted services.
I don't exactly know what they are, so that's the only reason I'm asking. So what are the services that they offer for the dues you pay?
Mapping, hazard mitigation, grants. What else do they offer?
I honestly, I couldn't tell you. I haven't asked that question. But it gives us a vote, certainly, which we do not have right now on the policy committee. We do have a vote on the Transportation Advisory Committee. But it's, I agree with Ed. I'm not saying that we should just arbitrarily decide to pay them. I think that there's a value to the organization, whether or not we want to explore that for next year. I think that's a good idea. We can get some answers to those questions. But for now, for expediency, I would suggest that we take a vote as to whether or not to pay it.
And just a final comment, Mr. Chairman. When I arrived in town and found out that we had no representative at SRPC, even if we don't pay dues, we should stay engaged with the SRPC. That's why we have representatives there. Mostly because of the Metropolitan Planning Organization inclusion, is because the federal government requires the Regional Planning Commission to make sure that any money that's coming in for transportation projects have a public hearing type of input to it. So that has to happen. So we should always be a part of that process. What's $850 doing would do for us, I don't know. But I'm just saying that we should still stay engaged, and it's more important than just paying dues.
So as of now, we do not have that money in this year's budget. That's not saying we can't go to the selectmen and ask for the money if we decided we wanted to pay SRPC dues. So at this time, I'd like to have a motion, unless we want to have additional discussion.
Just one, you mentioned that the SRPC would assist in grant, writing, filing for grants. And there's a grant commission now in town, is that correct?
The Brookfield Grant Review Committee.
Review committee. Now, would that be an asset to that group to be able to have that resource of having SRPC as a resource for grants? If there are anything in the future that we want to pursue.
If I may.
Go ahead.
Yes.
I would say they could. Again, I've always favored contracting if we need it, because they do contract, they have municipal contracts all the time. If you look at the pie chart of their operation funds, it shows they have contracted services. So I would assume that since we have representation there, and if we had a question about a grant, they're not going to say no. And
Right.
of course, we would have that.
Okay.
I think it would be advantageous for us to investigate what services, because there might be other services they could offer the town, and try to understand. I mean, you're not going to go buy a car and realize it doesn't have a radio and power windows, right? So we're not going to spend money and not know what we're getting. So I think if we're going to be able to speak eloquently to what we're receiving, then we need to know what they're offering to us for that payment. So, Diane, if that's something you could look into by any chance,
I will,
to see
yes,
what
I've already
what
made that.
other things they assist the town with, based on the fact that they're members and pay dues, that would be great. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just to, not recap, I would say reinterpret what Geary said about the true purpose of the Regional Planning Commission. Just through sheer observation, what I see happening with the Regional Planning Commissions is that planning boards across the state overutilize the SRPC, or the Regional Planning Commissions, instead of using their own authority as planning boards, because they are a group of highly educated planners. Planning boards are manned by citizens with no experience usually, and are volunteers. They are paid. So what happens is the planning boards begin to kind of lose that technical ability, and they give it over to the Regional Planning Commissions because it's easier for them to help you do it than do it yourself. That would be my interpretation of what Geary said. Not that they are purposely doing it, that the natural order of things is that that's happening.
I kind of
And you
think
can't
that's
really
that.
deny that because it is happening. Effingham, for instance, sorry Effingham, they utilize the Lakes Region Planning Commission a lot. Their whole town is almost ran entirely on grants. So they utilize them a lot. Now, is their planning board not doing what they're supposed to be doing? But it just seems like it's just naturally going in that direction with a lot of things. That's all. That's my interpretation of what he said.
Pretty much. I said it's not aggressively insidious, it's just the way it goes.
Oh, I didn't know aggressively insidious meant.
We abdicate our responsibilities, someone else will assume them.
Right.
Also, on this planning board, we're part of the Stratford Regional Planning Board, and there's a Lakes Region Planning Board. Which would be a better fit for us? One that handles rural towns like the Lakes Region, or one that handles cities like Rochester and Dover?
We were with we were with Lakes LPC until.
So if there was any consideration of paying dues and joining the planning board, maybe we should look at both organizations and see what fits the town of Brookfield better.
Mr. Chairman, the reason why we moved to SRPC was location. It seemed like it was very difficult for the representative here to go all the way across the lake, basically, over to Meredith? Or is that where they have it? So that was hard. It was easier for us to just drop on 16 and go down there. And the problem is, I used to film the Lakes Region Planning Commissions too. The Lakes Region Planning Commissions, it's all about lakes, 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 lakes. And our representative is there, so what does this have to do with rural town of Brookfield? Then when you go to SRPC, it seems very metropolitan. Because I don't believe that LRPC is part of an MPO because it's not big enough.
That's right.
It doesn't have enough population. So now you go down there and it seems very metropolitan. You have all these larger cities, you're right in Rochester, and then it's like, well, what does that really have to do with Brookfield? That was the other issue. I personally felt when I was there, very kind of disconnected with the process. Not the transportation part of it, the MPO part of it, but a lot of the other stuff just seemed, too big city.
So what you're saying is we need to start our own Moose Mountain region.
Well, listen, I already proposed that, that what should happen is that all the planning boards in the political district of Carroll County should form their own regional planning commission. So it would be all the elected planning boards of the region meeting about regional issues. And then connect that with an MPO. Oh, that's a good idea.
That's a good idea.
That's a good idea. Well, I
What's an MPO?
Oh, MPO stands for Metropolitan Planning Organization.
Okay.
And it's formed by population through the Federal Highway Act.
No, it's defined by the census, and it's a means by which federal transportation dollars are distributed.
Okay.
All right, so, Diane,
I would like to move that the planning board inform the Board of Selectmen of their wish to not pay the dues for 2018, and ask that the letter accompanying denial letter be signed.
do you have a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
That's me.
Rick as well.
So motion carries.
So 2 opposed, is that right?
2 opposed.
Thank you. And this is for the denial letter to be signed also.
Yes. That was fun discussion.
It always is.
I think we do it every year. Do we pay it, do we don't pay it?
That's good.
All right. So thank you all for your feedback on that, it was good discussion. So last month's discussion as well, which I didn't see on old business, and I'm going to bring this up. There was some homework that was given to review the rules and procedure. Some of the discussion was to address hours. I think it was the hours of operation for the town. The meetings, Tim brought up the meetings were incorrect. They were supposed to be in the, is it the rules of procedure? Yes, I think they were on there as Monday, they're supposed to be Thursday. And this nice young lady over here pointed that out as well to us, that it says the wrong date in our survey paperwork.
Oh, sorry.
Subdivision paperwork, sorry. So our subdivision paperwork says we meet on Monday, which we don't meet on Mondays.
Right.
So we need to have that adjusted.
In other places in the book too, I think, there are a couple of references.
Yeah. So I believe there was a motion to give George the ability to make some changes. So what I would like to do is I would like to discuss, the first thing that I heard from the meeting was the reference to the Stoneham Corners bulletin board. So we can address that, we can get that off the table, we can make the corrections, and I don't know if anybody else did their homework. Sarah, what do you do to students when they don't do their homework? Okay, well, it seems like I was the one that did my homework.
What's that?
George, did you take a look at that?
That's the middle school.
Yes.
Okay. So if you could all refer to the rules of procedure, and I will go through where it references Stoneham Corner. You get the right one. So we're going to, the first place that refers to the postings on Stoneham Corner Bulletin Board is section 4, page 3 of 20. 4.1.7. So we need to strike.
George,
Yes.
do you have an extra new book around?
I was gonna say, what revision are we supposed to be working on, just to make sure everybody's on the same
I'm sorry.
page?
I'm on
The
the
rules of procedure?
December 21st, 2017.
This is 3 years old.
revision.
Since I came back, it's useless. Sorry.
December 31st, 2017. Is that what you said?
December 21st is what I have in my book right now.
Okay.
I got this off of the web, so the locations are gonna be right, and I'm just gonna confirm that in my book they're right, so.
Yeah, I think the first page is that we've received the rules and procedures is December 21st, and that was an update.
I've got all of rules and procedures saying December 21st.
Yeah, I don't think we've formally adopted any changes since then.
Yeah.
We've talked about it, but
Thank you, sir.
Rich, has that bulletin board been removed? Because the last week when I was up there, it was still there.
Appreciate that.
Still there.
Good. Do we have plans to have that removed anytime soon?
It's been noticed as out of service. There's a big sign on out of service.
It says no longer in use.
Okay, as long as there's something on. I just didn't want to take it out of this and still have it sitting there or have people referring to it. But if there's a sign that says that we're not using it, then that should make it clear too.
The last bulletin posted.
All right, so we all found 4.1.7 under duties of officers. section 4.
My new book.
Do you want a motion just to remove that?
I think I'll point them out, and then we can have a motion to remove them all at the end. Otherwise, we're gonna have a lot of motions, and it's gonna carry on past 9 o'clock, and Gary's gotta get to bed.
We don't go to bed till 1 o'clock in the morning.
Right, but if we stay till 9, we're gonna go to bed at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Probably.
So we don't want that to happen.
It's just a break, right there.
Huh?
It's just a break.
All right, you find it, Gary?
They're working for it. No, I'm going there. 4. Yeah. All right, and he posted it. We're gonna get rid of,
Stoneham Corners bulletin.
yep,
It just should say town office bulletin board. All right, next one is section 8, page 8 of 20. 8.1.3. And it refers to, let's see, board members and alternates shall be informed at least 48 hours in advance, and a notice shall be posted in 2 public places, i.e. exterior town office building board and Stoneham Road bulletin board, no less than 24 hours. So we need to get rid of this Stoneham Road bulletin board.
no, we're gonna get rid of change the 2 to a 1.
No,
No, because it's still going to be posted in 2 public places, just not on Stoneham, as far as I know.
Well, where's the other
can you
posting?
replace, can we simply replace Stoneham Road bulletin board with town website?
We have to work in the changes of the 91A law, which states that you can have it in 1 public location and on the website, and that's it. But it doesn't say that in this section. It says in the first one, the 4.7 one. It says it in 4.1.7 about the website. But it does, but this 91A2, A:2, section 2 is changed. So it should say 2 public places, one of which can be the town's internet website.
Well, could we put down the town office building board and cross out Stoneham Road and put the town website?
Tim?
On the May 17th, 2018 meeting, on page 12, we marked up public notice, section 13.1, to say public notice shall be given by posting in 2 public places, including the exterior town office bulletin board and town website. Perhaps that should be adopted everywhere.
Correct. So do we want to have a motion to use that exact phrasing on all these changes where it refers to Stoneham? Or do we need a motion to do that, or we're all in agreement to do that? I think we had a motion at the last meeting.
What we have at the last meeting?
I believe we did. We had a motion at the last meeting to change that wording.
Throughout the.
The discussion was, the homework was to find the other places in the rules of procedure where it refers to the Stoneham.
That's fine.
So I believe we've already voted to say that that was the wording we want, and then we were supposed to find where else it occurs in here.
We have
That was the homework I handed out, actually.
Yeah, it was. See, I watched those meetings. Thank you, Ed.
Substitute teacher handed out homework.
Yeah, Tim?
in the minutes for May 17, in the new business, Ed motioned that all references of Stoneham four-corner bulletin board be deleted from the rules of procedure, and for the administrative assistant given authority to amend the rules of procedure regarding posts being in 2 places.
Perfect.
Done.
So there's a motion. So I'll point out where those areas are.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to read the 91A2 change. It's 91A2, under meetings open to the public. So it's 91A:2, section 2, and then it says, A notice of the time and place of each such meeting, including a non-public session, shall be posted in 2 appropriate places, one of which may be the public body's internet website if such exists. Is that the verbiage we just got?
So the question I have on what you just read is we refer to 2 public places. So can we change public to appropriate places and put the website and the town bulletin board?
Yes, that's why it was changed to appropriate from
Yeah.
that other term. That way it's coordinated with the actual statute.
And we do call it the statute under 8.1.3, 91A.
What is the next one?
Okay, the next one, so let's get the verbiage down so we understand, because George, I think, has probably written this 3 times. Did you get what we want to do, George, or do you want me to read what we're looking to do here?
Well, I have a couple, multiple things. One of them is, the last one was to change the 2 public places to 2 appropriate places, is that
Yeah.
correct?
Correct.
And of course, remove all references to Stone Four Corners. Okay, and to replace that reference with the website.
Correct. Thank you. So now we can just run through it and point out where those take place. Everybody agree with that? So we left off on 8.1.3. Let's see, the next place is 13, which is page 12. Which is what we addressed at the last meeting. So 13.1, we addressed to change that to 2 public places, which is actually going to say 2 appropriate places now, including the exterior town office bulletin board and town website. We're just going to line out the Stone Corner bulletin board. Okay, next one. You okay, go on?
Yep.
Let's see, 14. See page 13. Yes, 13 of 20. 14.1. Oh, Tim, sorry.
That's right. I'm just wondering, in this process, are these changes going to be made and then they'll be presented to the board for review before adoption? Or is this a, yes, okay. So
Yes.
can I suggest that whatever changes that need to be made, formatting changes, we give George the direction to go forth and make it in the document and present the document to us for review, rather than going through each page and trying to find where's Waldo on all these.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, what I can do is I can highlight them. Also, I can, according to our rules of procedure, any documentation changes need to be sent in advance so that the planning board has time to review it. I believe it's 15 days, I'm not sure, so I'll email that as well.
Thank you.
Should we create a working document?
Okay.
Yeah, well, we got another issue here. Before we load George up with stuff about coming back and reviewing things, George is not going to be here after this evening. So consequently, we should consider how we approach this. If we're asking him to make stuff up so that we can review it, which wouldn't be necessarily at the next meeting, and then put it into print after that, well, I guess we can do that if we find someone that can fulfill that function. Otherwise, we're going to be in there printing this stuff up. So, do we hear any volunteers? I don't have the time. That's where we are. So we should make that decision here and now, not
As
next month.
far as editing where it says Stoneham Road, I think we can handle that as
Okay.
a board. George, we'll handle that as a board,
Okay, thank you.
okay? I'll need the document, but we have some other things that we're going to be assigning to people to do as well. So, I will take that on as an action item. I will not have it done by the next meeting, I can promise you that. So,
You may not be here.
I won't be here. So,
So you're taking on the action item to just replace the verbiage that we just spoke of?
yes,
To physically change the document?
yes. Tim?
Do we have, you, obviously, you did your homework, you have
I
a
did.
list of items.
I did, I'm a good student.
You are a good student, so let me help you with your burden. Give me the document with our changes, I'll do the find and replace of all the references that we could change. Bring it to the, we'll bring it to the next meeting,
Okay, appreciate it.
rather than,
Because it would postpone it another month, because I won't have,
fair enough, it gives me another month to accomplish the task.
Diane.
Can we also change the bottom of our standard agenda to also reflect this language, which still talks about Stone Corner and doesn't talk about the website?
Yeah, that's probably a good idea.
Does that say Monday as well?
No.
No,
Oh, it does have Thursday, that's very good.
yeah, we'll need to address that, thank you. All right, so we will move on with the other areas for discussion, and then we'll vote on the acceptance of that to make the change. Move on. So page 13 of 20, under hearings 14.1, about halfway down, it also refers to two public places. We're going to put appropriate places. And then it also says Stone Corners right under that. It does refer to the town website there. All right, last but not least, let's see, 16, so this would be 16.2. Yeah, 16.2. Yes. And that's about halfway through the paragraph as well. So, that was, when I did the search of the document, those were the only places that it came up with the words stone corners. I used, I think, 3 searches, and I came up with iterations of those, so. So do I have a motion to accept those proposed changes to the rules of procedure?
We already accepted them May 17th.
Ah,
We also already accepted the Thursday date change, the third Thursday of the month. That was also accepted on the 17th.
okay. So we don't need a motion, we can go ahead and do that.
We actually don't need any motions for housekeeping.
Yeah,
We don't need any votes either.
Mr. Chair?
but we definitely want to do the housekeeping on the agenda. We want to do that one as well, so we don't forget about that. Ed, where are you?
Yeah, there's another change in the 91A law. Section 2-BA. If a public body maintains an internet website or contracts with a third party to maintain an internet website on its behalf, it shall either post its approved minutes.
Is that an Android?
Somebody just sent me an email. It says, it shall either post its approved minutes in a consistent and reasonable accessible location on the website, or post and maintain a notice on the website stating where the minutes may be reviewed and copies requested. I just want to make sure the rules of procedure has it in there that our minutes, and I know that's already happening now, but the minutes have to also, the minutes and the postings must be on that website. Since we have been using it, it needs to be in the rules of procedure. So I don't see it in there unless I'm missing something.
Do Didn't you say or a reference to where they can be found?
In a consistent and reasonable accessible location on the website, or post and maintain a notice on the website stating where the minutes may be reviewed, meaning it could show up, if you're not already, some towns were not putting, they would leave it in book in there, but what it requires them to do, if they have a book in the office, is to show on the website that there's a book in the office that has the minutes in it.
So just be consistent one way or the other.
That's the only reason why it was put in, is to be consistent.
What have we been doing? I never look for the minutes on the website because we get them.
They're okay.
They're posted on the website.
Yep. Under the planning, under boards, planning, meeting minutes.
But I don't see it in the rules of procedure.
I don't think I saw it in there at all.
The posting requirements in there, but not the minutes and the posting.
It does state that on the it does in the page 16, 16.2 minutes. As well as posted within the same time frame on exterior bulletin boards at the town office and stone corners and the town website.
Yep.
You got the meeting minutes?
Yep.
Sounds like that's not required anymore. You can simplify that, it sounds like.
It does say minutes of the board meeting shall be kept in accordance with the provisions of RSA 91A.
I think that covers it. It covers your concern, Ed.
So where they're gonna be posted? You specifying where they're gonna be posted?
May I?
Yes.
It'll be on the town website and the public location out here.
Okay. It's not required, right? You just read it, that's not required. The website is.
What's required is that we're consistent with what we're doing.
Yes. Yes.
So we do either or, if we wanted to, as long as we continue to do that. Right?
Yes, so whatever you specify.
Yep.
And that way, we're not here anymore. It's very clear what you have to do.
Might not get hit by a bus.
Maybe
Are we all
try
going
for a
on?
while, I don't know.
Where are we going? All right, so I think that's good enough for old business. So further discussion that, well, actually, let's do public comments.
Public comments or member
Oh, we
comments?
got public comments.
We had that, didn't we?
No, because we did public comments at the end too.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, there's two spots.
Oh, okay.
Because if you sat through this whole meeting, you bet someone's gonna wanna talk about it.
Hmm?
So if you sat through this whole meeting, you
Yeah,
bet
I
someone's
got
gonna
it,
wanna talk about it.
yeah.
All right, member comments. Gary?
Okay, I'm gonna make a motion and I'm compelled to explain why. So, I'm going to explain it. I'm the oldest guy in the room, I'm probably dead before any of you. My time is very precious to me. I get up in the morning at 5, I go to work at 7, I work to midnight, 7 days a week. I haven't got time to sit around and chat about irrelevancies at all, under any circumstances. I'm on the planning board because I believe self-government is only there if you do it. I've been on it for 15 years, but if anybody finds anything of value that the board could or should support or approach or do, then it should be placed on the agenda as new business and either dealt with in committee or by the board as a whole. Hence the motion. I move that member comments be limited to 2 minutes and discussion to 2 minutes. That's it.
Second,
Discussion?
sometimes member comments really extend the meeting, and sometimes they don't add value to the meeting. So to prevent that from happening, I agree with Gary. Member comments could be limited.
If it adds value, place it on the agenda.
You could make more than one, you could probably recognize some more than one comment if you have more than one thing to talk about.
If you wanted to, this is my opinion on it, if you wanted to limit public comment so you don't get what happens in Tamworth, where they go through each agenda item and have a public comment period every single agenda item, and they have 4-hour meetings, then I would be in favor of the public comment being limited. It's just my opinion. So
I got a motion on the table, and it's on
We're in
public
discussion.
comments.
We're in discussion.
We're in discussion. So it's my opinion that you shouldn't limit discussion of members. What should happen is the chair already has the ability to stop somebody from talking if they are going on and on and on. Why take that away with the simple, 2-minute? I just don't think it's necessary. I don't think it's gonna hurt anything, but I also think it's necessary. The chair controls the meeting. So you shouldn't be, we're here to debate. So if somebody wants to talk for more than 2 minutes, you're telling me that you're not gonna be allowed to?
If it's planning board business, it should be discussed during a conventional meeting under new business. If it isn't planning board business, it's chit chat. I will have to go home and eliminate that, fine with that. I don't care if you stay here till dawn, doesn't matter to me. But I'm not staying. I have things to do.
Diane?
I'd like to ask for some clarification on your motion, if I may. Are you speaking of the agenda item member comments, or are you speaking of?
I'm speaking at the end of the end of the
Can I
night.
finish my question, please?
Okay. Well, yes, I thought you did.
I didn't finish my question.
All right, go ahead.
Are you speaking of the member comment opportunity at the end of the meeting, or are you referring to the discussion that we have on the items that are on the agenda?
At the end of the meeting, member comments at the end of the meeting, after business has been concluded by the planning board. We can sit around and, I don't care who stays here all night, I have to go. It's fine with me. But I will stay for what the members may have to contribute for 2 to 4 minutes, but there's 7 of us that can take a half an hour of the time to spend it. Interrupts my income stream. I have to go. If we don't want to limit it, I can self-limit it, but I'm making the motion because I don't feel that it's of any value whatsoever unless it's on the agenda as new business. Otherwise, we're chit-chatting, and I don't have time for it. That's all.
Rick?
In the past, even after member comments, these meetings have stayed longer after hours for
Yep.
chit-chat purpose, and, I think everybody's open to that. A lot of people stay here and talk about other things after the meeting that aren't planning board.
I just hesitate to get up and leave before the meeting is adjourned, which I will do if I have to. That's the way it is. Whatever you guys want to do. You're the board.
I
Second
think
it.
my only concern with the member comments is there have been times where some of the comments have been something that you really need to vote on, and it's really outside of what the agenda is. So that's where I would caution where some of the member comments come up. So that's my only opinion, but Ed, go ahead.
Put it on the agenda next meeting, no problem.
I agree with no chit chat. I wish we would come here and we should be able to do what we have to do.
Don't work
in
that way.
45 minutes or an hour. You shouldn't be here for 3 hours. It should be motion, vote, motion, vote, motion, vote, go home. I mean, I agree with that part of it, about just chit chat. But again, that's up to the chair. The chair should say, you're chit chatting, stop talking. And then that's it, because nobody should be staying here. Because
The chair doesn't do that. It's impolite, and we can't get that way. If we make a rule, we'll adhere to it. If we don't make a rule, the chair's gonna go, shut up, shut up, shut up. That's basically what he's doing. You're really going over too much, you're talking too much. He's not gonna do that. I don't care what you do, that's okay. This is not adversarial, but I'm gonna leave the room in about
Diane,
2 minutes anyway.
Gary, please be quiet.
All right.
Thank you.
That was polite.
That's cool.
So I guess my question is, there are occasions where I provide, and we all do, we provide information that is informational and not requiring a vote, so it doesn't get on the agenda. Like I was going to speak about the broadband meeting that I went to, but so I guess I agree with Ed that it concerns me about limiting a member from speaking at, an elected member who's representing the community on an agenda item where there's opportunity for member comments, to limit that. I think that the chair has the ability to make that. And I think that we're all aware of Gary's point. I just don't like it being regulated. That's my 2 cents worth.
So I think we can understand, it is a valid point. I mean, we all have things we want to do. Some of us want to sleep. And if we're bringing something that would involve more discussion with the board, I think it would be worthwhile to put that on as new business so that we can all discuss it as a board versus member comments. I don't think that's really the good area for that to come in. Like telecommunications stuff and that kind of, the meetings you've been through, I think there's some good information there that's going to help the board make decisions later on as well. That I would prefer to have that as new business where we can all discuss it and actually have a formal area where we can discuss it versus at the end it's just a comment and then we're kind of left here going, okay, so now what do we do with that information? We just sat here for 10 minutes and listened to it, but that was it. And some of this stuff I think is something that is very important to the board that will help the town. So I do agree on that aspect. I don't agree with limiting the time, but Ed?
I'm not proposing to extend this meeting any further, but why don't you just get rid of the word member comments? And that would satisfy it, because then you're not going to just chit chat, because I agree that does happen. And then you would be discussing things on the agenda anyway. I think it's the member comment just seems like it's a free-for-all to just chat. So if you want to just remove that, but I'm not amending the motion, or maybe I am, I don't know.
Rick?
Anyone else?
Thank you. We have a motion on the table, we have a second.
The chair can also extend the 2 minutes if a member is giving valuable information.
So we're going to add that to the motion?
Just a statement.
I think the way it should be is the chair should be able to make the decision if something is going to the point that it's not valuable to the planning board. They can stifle it.
Already can. That's happened before.
Then why would we need a motion on the table to do something different than what's already allowed in the rules of procedure?
There's still a motion on the table. So.
Well, I can call the question, but,
Yeah.
well, look, this created a giant discussion, which is interrupting my income stream anyway. Listen, I can see where this is going, and you don't want to regulate it, and that's fine. I'll just get up and leave at that point, because I have to do it. I have things to do. So, member comments are great. Everybody wants to talk about stuff. It's great. I just don't have the time. So we don't have to have it as a motion. I'll just back it up.
Well, it is a motion.
We had a motion.
I can take it back anytime I want. So let's call the question. Either we vote on it, yes or no, and then it'll either rise or fall under its own.
So you made a valid point. We all discussed your point. We're aware of it. Now that we're aware of it, we will make that a precedent when it comes to member comments. So you have a motion, we have a second. I say we vote on it and move on and go home. Sound good?
Repeat the motion.
So the motion that Gary presented was to limit member comments to 2 minutes.
And agenda items.
And if there was
And
something...
discussion to 2 minutes. Comment to 2 minutes, discussion to 2 minutes. I don't see why it needs to go further than
On
that.
agenda items.
On member comments at the end of the business. We've conducted our business, we've come to the end of our list for the evening, and it's member comments to come up with anything that the members feel like talking about. And sometimes it runs on ad nauseum. I have to go.
You get it. Yep.
Real simple.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay.
Nay.
Okay. Good night.
Can we adjourn?
We're going to adjourn.
It's okay.
Thank you.